I already asked everybody. We do have a lot of front-end developers here. How many of you guys know what a framework is? I'm guessing that's why you're. How many of you don't know what a framework is? We're in trouble. So just real quickly, Jonathan, please let us know what exactly is a framework if you had to describe it.
Shit, I was hoping Mark would have to answer. Can everybody hear me? Is this thing on? There we go.
Put it on your chin.
No, I'm not going to do that. Okay. So yeah, hi everybody. Hi. It's nice to hi. What is a framework? A framework is. You have to help me. A framework is a or not. A framework is patterns and best practices and shortcuts to help you get started on things and do things that are awesome more quickly. That was a really ineloquent answer. It's tricky because what is a framework changes pretty frequently, and there's a lot of different kinds of frameworks.
Yeah, our frameworks are
like
the patterns, the templates, they're the constraints, the things we try to do all the grunt work so that you guys can do better, awesomer shit than what we do.
Right. All the stuff that you don't want to keep doing every single time. That's a framework. It's all the stuff that you don't want to keep doing over and over again.
Yeah.
And Paul Boag wrote an article about the purpose of a framework or for a pattern library is to create visual design consistency. Can you guys tell us of some other frameworks that exist besides Bootstrap and Foundation?
No.
No.
Just kidding.
Mark?
Off the top of my head, there's Topcoat, which actually one of the guys who works, actually the guy that worked on it is right over there.
Hey, there he is.
Raise your hand, raise your hand. That guy made Topcoat.
Hey, it's Topcoat.
What's his name?
Christoph?
We won't go.
I had lunch with him 2 weeks ago. I feel like a jerk now. Christoph, he's legit. He's awesome.
There's Pure. That one's from
Pure from
Yahoo. There's Inuit.
There's Inuit, yeah. From I forgot his name now.
There's Inuit. There's Bourbon.
Harry.
There's Bourbon Neat. If you're feeling semantic-y.
There's one called Tuk Tuk.
Really?
T-U-K. It's all one word. They claim to be not Bootstrap. It's in the slogan. It looks cool.
Well, they're correct.
There's also Gumby.
Yeah,
Gumby's
that's right, there's
another
Gumby.
one. I've never.
Skeleton.
And Skeleton.
Right?
And Skeleton.
Okay. So we're all curious. How was?
And Ratchet. Sorry, there's another framework called Ratchet. Jacob and Connor. Connor, raise your hand too. Connor used to work with us at Zerb as well. He works at GitHub with me, and he made this other thing called Ratchet with Jacob. So, love framework.
And you guys just released the second version of that
the
integration. Okay. So just curious, how did you guys start? I'm going to start with Mark. How did you come up with the idea of Bootstrap?
So, if it wasn't clear from the slides, I worked at Zerb for 2.5 years. It was my first job in California. And I worked with this guy for about 1.5 years, I think, is how much we overlapped. And so when we were working with, basically what we did as a design agency, so we did a lot of work for different clients of all different sizes, and a lot of that then entailed doing stuff on the web. And the best way that we found to deliver that kind of stuff wasn't in Photoshop in any kind of sense there. We would still deliver that stuff, but we'd actually want to give them the tools to make all that stuff come to life in the browser. So we made style guides. And those started in Photoshop, and then also we did the same thing in HTML and CSS. So what we would deliver is all the standard graphics and then HTML, CSS, like a couple of template pages, some of the key pages we designed, like maybe like a home page and like a sub page, and then we'd have all of our components and that was basically the inspiration for, at the time we called it the Zerb Style Guide, which John and I worked on a lot when we were there together. And that was for Zerb.com and all the applications that we were making there. And it was the same kind of thing. So we had a lot of inspiration for style guides. I've been making style guides basically for the last 6 years. Yeah. And so when I got to Twitter, I just wanted to do the same thing.
So essentially a framework is a style guide.
More or less, yeah.
Okay. Jonathan, would you give the same answer if you were to somebody were to ask you how did you come up with, or who came up with the idea of Foundation?
Foundation, well, me. Foundation came about, it was the same sort of thing. I mean, I worked at Zerb with Mark. I still work at Zerb, obviously. And we did style guides for all the clients. And every time we did a new project, the style guide that we had, the initial style guide that we had was pretty bare bones. Like it was like a 16-column fixed width grid, and it was buttons and like a couple of other things. And we still found ourselves just doing the same things over and over and over again. Like every client needed this, and every client needed this, and every client needed this. So after a while of doing all these style guides, which we still do for clients at Zerb, actually, this is totally aside, but one of the great advantages of giving style guides to clients is that it actually empowers them to build stuff themselves, which as a consultant is really awesome. It means they don't have to come back to you all the time to help them do things. They can actually do stuff themselves, so that's nice. But after doing this over and over and over again, we got the idea to take the style guide that we had and abstract that, because it had some sort of like Zerb-specific stuff in it. We used it for all of our internal things. So we decided to abstract it, pull out anything that was opinionated about design or visuals or whatever, and build it out to include any components that we thought we were going to use more than like once. And that was the beginning of Foundation. Foundation 1, actually, no one ever saw unless you worked at Zerb, because Foundation 1 was all internal. But Foundation 2 was the one that we released.
And now we're at Foundation 5.
We're at 5.2 as of today.
5.2. Give it up for Zerb for launching 5.2 today. Foundation. And we're at Bootstrap 3.1.
3.1.1. 3.2 is going to come out maybe in a couple weeks.
Okay. I highly suggest if anybody wants to like get in a better mood to go visit the Bootstrap blog, because there's a 90s dance party with every release that they announce, which is really fun.
The last
for
music video,
me,
we put
at
a
least.
music video at the top of all of our blog posts if you haven't seen them. And the last one was Rhythm is a Dancer.
No, I think there was one before that, actually. There was one after that.
We've done a lot of them.
It's, yeah, super fun.
Half my days are spent on YouTube favoriting videos that I think would work well. Super good.
That's true. He doesn't work very much. Just kidding, baby.
Okay, so if somebody, say that I wanted to design my own framework, how would I be able to do that?
Well, can I answer in kind of a snarky way?
However, how do you not answer in a snarky?
Okay, fair enough. I mean, don't. I think it's a cool coding exercise to make your own framework. I think it's a cool, like, empowering kind of thing to do. It is a lot of work. There's a lot of stuff to build for a framework. There's a lot of moving pieces, and the frameworks that exist now, I mean, ours notwithstanding, but also other people's, are pretty sophisticated. Not to toot our own horns, I guess. So there's a lot of stuff to do to build your own framework. If you really want to build your own framework, then, I mean, build your own framework and figure out what are the pieces that you need repeatedly, what are the things that you are always going to be using over and over again, and then figure out the absolute best possible way you can think of to build them. I think that's one of the biggest challenges of working on a framework or building a framework, is that, especially if you're talking about like Foundation or Bootstrap or anything like that people use reasonably frequently, is that anytime you design something like that, anytime you build something, you have to be pretty opinionated about it, and lots of people are going to either really be excited about your opinions or they're going to fuck you up about it. So you kind of have to, can I do that?
Shout out to the haters.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. So you have to be pretty on point, I guess. You should be pretty ballsy to do some of that stuff. So if you're going to build your own framework, it helps to just go out and look and see like what's the absolute best possible way I could do this thing, and that'll change in 2 months.
But say that you're not creating a framework for a huge audience, you're just creating it for a specific product. Like not necessarily like Bootstrap or Foundation, you're just creating more of a style guide and a list of patterns and how everything is going to work.
I think either way, there's a couple ways you can go about it. One, you can use someone else's thing and you can pull whatever you want from that. Both Bootstrap and Foundation have a web-based customizer, so you can check, I only need these 5 components, download that and use that as base if you wanted to, right? I've given a talk at a couple places called the Future of Frameworks. And basically, one of the things I've tried to reiterate is it's really easy to make what I'm calling compilation frameworks, and that's basically what a lot of our current frameworks are. You just mash together a bunch of different things, whether you've made them individually or if you made them all just for that thing, and that becomes a framework. Like in both Bootstrap and Foundation, we have normalize, and we have like a preprocessor. We've got a couple other things. There's a lot of other ones that are like, you take any grid system, you take some basic typography scales, which there's tons of both of those. You just Google grid system, and you're just going to get pages and pages of it. Same with type scale. And you make some buttons, make some forms and table styles, and boom, you've got the basics of a framework. And it's really easy to put that stuff together. Putting it together and making it work on every device and testing all those things, sometimes you don't need to do that. You can go out of your way to do that if you want to make another one. You can fork Bootstrap or Foundation. Like they're both open source. They're both MIT, so you can do basically whatever you want to them. Same with a lot of the other frameworks.
And there are a lot of frameworks out there that began as forks of Bootstrap or Foundation. I know there's some that are fairly large now. There's also a lot of good examples out there. If you want to make like a style guide, like for your company or for yourself or something like that, there's a lot of good examples now. Companies are getting much more open about their style guides. So if you actually go out and look and Google it, there's a bunch of companies now that actually publicly release their style guides or their coded style guides, so you can see what their, how they put their components together and what their pieces are. There's some really cool examples of that now.
MailChimp is a really good one.
Yeah, MailChimp has a really good one.
Is it Mapbox? Is that the name of it?
The first one I ever saw was actually for, who did Chris Epstein work for before he went to go to LinkedIn?
No idea.
Was it Caring? I think it was Caring.com. Chris Epstein.
That's his own company. That's his own company.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So Chris Epstein is one of the creators of Sass, and he's always been really huge on style guides. So he released one like quite a while ago and released that one publicly. So he's a
Speaking of which, I'm sure what happened with Less? Is Less still part of Bootstrap, or what is it the future? So
this guy named Alexi, his username's Cloudhead. Jacob and I know him. We've met him a couple times. He made Less as a preprocessor, a JavaScript-based preprocessor. Actually, I think it started out as Ruby, but he turned it into JavaScript. And when I was at Twitter working on the earliest version of Bootstrap, which was then at the time actually called Twitter Blueprint because it was all internal, I used Less because I wanted all the power of preprocessors. But at the time, I didn't know what the hell a gem was. And that was required for Sass, and I was like, I don't know what's happening here, so I'm just going to use JavaScript because that makes sense. And so Less at the time was just the JavaScript file you included. It compiled your CSS, and everything was hunky-dory. And so Less has been a part of Bootstrap since the very beginning. And we've stuck with it because they've done a lot of iterations over it. Feature-wise, they're basically on par, Sass versus Less, and things like that. I said more or less, more or less. The syntax is widely different. There's a couple other features. We have an official Sass port for Bootstrap since 3.1, and that's just a conversion script that they run to like convert it from Less to Sass. So like, you just write a script and you can do that. So it's kind of pretty crazy. But Less has historically run really fast for us. It runs in the browser. It powers our customizer. We knew the guys, so when we submitted pull requests, we'd be like, yeah, just merge, please merge. Like when we wanted to change things in Less, which actually we did in one of our releases. We're like, yeah, we need this for tomorrow, and just shipped it. Yeah.
Which one do you, this is not to put you on the spot or anything, Mark, but which one do you prefer to work in?
It goes either or for me,
Less
just from
or
the syntax.
Sass?
So I working at GitHub, everything is Sass for GitHub.com, and then I spend the other half of the day in Less for Bootstrap. So literally, I'm either or at this point.
I like Sass. We've always used, we built Foundation, we rebuilt Foundation in Sass for Foundation 3. Because one of our designers, his name was Chris, was really hot to trot on Sass, and he was like, yeah, we're going to do Sass. And I was like kind of a curmudgeon about CSS. I was like, man, preprocessors are dumb. But he got me on board with Sass. He got actually the whole team on board with Sass. And Zerb has always been a Rails shop anyways, so gems were not really a problem. It was,
Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, sorry, hang on. I should say gems are not a problem for Zerb. They're still sort of a problem for me because that's not really my scene, but we have very talented engineers who do that. So shout out to those guys who are.
In the gem
hey,
scene.
one of them's here, but it's like the tallest one. Anyways, so yeah, we've always used Sass, and I think I don't know. I think, to be totally honest, I've never used Less all that much. I know a bit about the differences between it and the syntactical differences between it, but not a whole lot. I haven't really dealt with it. I've just always been in Sass.
Yeah.
What do you guys think is going to happen in the future with Less and Sass and other preprocessors? Do you see any other ones coming out?
They're going to merge and become Lass. That's a stupid answer. I don't know. They're both have their different opinions on how they do things. Like the syntax, we talked about that, and the feature sets and everything like that. If you look at how to like generate a list of classes just programmatically from Less versus Sass, it's going to look wildly different. I think that the goal should be to like basically make it so that Less or Sass don't exist. Like a lot of this should just go back into CSS.
Which a lot of it already is. They've got all kinds of proposals for ways to put variables and mix-ins or whatever the Less equivalent is into CSS itself, which would be definitely preferable because having to run a preprocessor just to get the browser to recognize your stuff is not ideal. It would be nice if the browser could just parse the stuff. So that'll happen at some point.
I'd probably say minimum of another 5 years.
We just need one of you all to create it, that's all. So you're getting ideas tonight for something to innovate.
Let's just pretend that the CSS working groups can get stuff done in less than like half a decade. So let's see what happens.
And I'm going to pretend like I don't know them. Right? All right, so anyway, what are the pros and cons of using a framework, such as Bootstrap or Foundation?
I'll go. Well, sure, I'll start. Why not? Hi.
You have my permission.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate that. Pros and cons of using framework. Boy, there's a lot. Pros of using framework is there's a whole bunch of stuff that you don't have to do. Other people have already done a lot of heavy lifting for you. So you don't have to worry about, I mean, there are a lot of frameworks and there are a lot of different ways of doing it. So odds are if you have a very particular opinion about the kind of stuff that you want, you can find a framework that more or less subscribes to that. But it'll take care of the grid for you, it'll take care of the layout for you, it'll take care of, in almost any case, it'll take care of responsive things for you, it'll take care of a lot of JavaScript stuff for you. One of the beautiful things about frameworks, Foundation or Bootstrap or any of them really, is that if you don't know a lot of JavaScript, like a lot of designers, myself included, you don't need to know a lot of JavaScript to do really cool stuff with these frameworks because someone has already put in all the legwork to make that work for you. So there's a ton of stuff that you just don't have to do if you use a framework, which is really nice. You also don't have to QA nearly as much, which is great. In most cases, if you take a look at what browsers and devices and such these frameworks support, you can rely with pretty good certainty on the fact that unless you break it, stuff is going to work as you would expect in pretty much any of these browsers or devices. I know at Zerb, like that was actually one of the biggest reasons we made Foundation at all. And one of the reasons we used it internally even before we released it is just that we would spend on any given client project, we would spend hours and hours and hours doing QA.
Well, maybe you would. I wouldn't. My shit just works.
I walked right into that one.
Yeah, you did. Sorry.
Other people would spend hours and hours and hours on QA while I laughed at them. But we wanted to cut that time down, so it was like if we build a framework and we just test the crap out of the framework, then we only have to test the stuff we build on top of that, which is much, much simpler. And this was, okay, admittedly, this was back when we still supported
This was 5 years ago, yeah.
This was like IE 6 and 7 and stuff. This was like a world of pain.
Yeah, who had to develop an IE 6? Yeah, you know what's up.
Anyone without your hand up, I hate you. I hate you so much. Yeah. Thanks, Hunter.
Some of the other pros, like documentation, is both for a lot of these frameworks, well, both for ours, because we put so much time into it, but all the other ones. I said both of us. We put so much time. No, come on. That's really well documented, not only what you can do, but also what you can't do. And you need both of those, just given the number of people that use these things, which is just outrageous. I think there was an article that I saw last week, or the beginning of this week, that said 5 million sites are using Bootstrap. And I was just like, first of all, I don't know how you got that information. Second of all, it's really cool. Why isn't it? Third of all, why isn't it more? No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, the documentation is just out of hand, out of control with how good it is for a lot of these frameworks, all these frameworks basically. Some of the cons, it's easy to get stuck in what other people are doing. And sometimes you can get down the pattern of, hey, let's just do the same thing over and over again. I mean, that's a lot of the point of this, like we don't want to do the same shit over and over again, but at some point you have to say to yourself, oh, I need to do something else on top of this. Yeah. And it's easy to not get to that point. Some of the other cons, what you might want in the framework might not be what either of us want to do in the framework. We're both very small teams that maintain the things actively, so when somebody says, hey, it would be great if we did these 14 other things, I'll be like, no, we'll do this one thing, and that'll work for almost everybody as much as we can. So there's a lot of back and forth, and sometimes you have to give, sometimes you have to take. So. And
I mean, any framework is, at the end of the day, is a compromise to some extent, because you get a lot of stuff for free, but you get what the framework gives you, and that's all you're going to get out of it is whatever the framework gives you. So it's
aside from the community aspect then as well. Like the number of plugins written for both Zerb and both for Foundation and Bootstrap is just out of control as well, and you can find all those on GitHub for the most part as well.
Right.
There's a whole market in like WordPress.
Yeah, there's themes.
WordPress
People have made entire businesses on top of these things, which just blows my mind every time I meet somebody that talks about that. Both for like tools that like, this is how you can make a Foundation or Bootstrap website using like a WYSIWYG editor or something like that.
Oh yeah, there's a ton of those things now.
Yeah, it's outrageous, and they're making a lot of money. I'm a little jealous.
You guys have created an empire. So this is one of the questions that I am wondering is there a way to develop these frameworks so that way when you guys come out with a new version, it's easy to, a major version, is it easy to to upgrade. We want to be able to upgrade easily to the next version and not have it break our entire template. I'm sure all of you guys who use the products would agree with that.
It kind of depends on, it changes from version to version, honestly. I mean,
Literally.
Right, it really does. Lots of things change from version to version. I'm pretty sure you guys do the same thing. We try to follow roughly something like semantic versioning, which is basically if it's a major point release, if it's 3 to 4, 4 to 5, 5 to 6, you can assume that we broke some things. So you're going to have to fix some things if you want to upgrade. That's sort of unavoidable. I mean, we make decisions for these frameworks that are supposed to last for a while, but we have to change them at some point. There's going to be a better way of doing something, or we're going to look back on something and go, that was stupid. We did that, mea culpa, we did that with Foundation 4. In Foundation 4, we removed tabs in favor of this component called sections, which were this super cool idea.
Big mistake.
Shut up. Which was the super cool idea, which was most people want tabs on larger screens, but on smaller screens, they usually want those tabs to turn into like an accordion element. So we thought, man, it'd be really cool if we could just write one component that just did that automatically, all the same markup. It would just transform into this other thing. Really neat and technically fun to put together, and an absolute bloody nightmare to restyle or do anything with, and it was just not the best. So in Foundation 5, we completely removed that, and we reinstituted tabs and accordions as separate components and came up with better ways of switching between the two of them. But it meant that if you were upgrading from Foundation 4 to Foundation 5 and you had a lot of sections, we broke all of your shit.
Yeah.
So that's just, I don't know, it's kind of the way it
Versioning
goes.
is hard, basically, especially when you're doing something that people build on, like, and they rely on quite heavily for production. Like, Bootstrap gets used on a lot of prototyping environments, also is used on a lot of production sites. And when people depend on that to serve their things, their entire businesses depend on this kind of stuff, like, you got to support it as best you can. So, like John was mentioning with semantic versioning, if it's like a 3.0.1 release, then presumably it's just bug fixes, documentation changes. If it's a 3.1 release, then that's going to be a new feature. It's not going to be removing a feature, but it's going to be new stuff added. If it's a major change, chances are we're probably going to break something. And the reason for that is the web kind of moves pretty fast. Like, really it moves pretty slow because we're still doing the same crap we've been doing for the last 5 years. But we're getting better at it. I was just talking with some folks actually earlier about this. But we have to break some things. We have to make your lives a little bit harder so that we can help push everybody forward. Right. Obviously, we're not all working on IE6 anymore, so like that's a good thing, right? So we can't always keep supporting that old stuff. And a lot of sites no longer even, or a lot of things, actually you guys don't even support IE8 anymore, do you really, out of the box?
Nope.
Yeah, we still do with Foundation 3.
Bootstrap 3.
Sorry, yeah, Bootstrap 3. My bad, it's a lot of words.
It's all good.
And we'll drop that for come V4, because IE8s just keep going down, right? So.
Actually, IE9 is too.
What do you guys think of the idea of having it update automatically? I know it's a bad idea, but some people take forever to update.
Yeah,
no
so
automatic
you don't have to
updates
update. This is what a lot of people
Yes,
get held up
that
on.
is
Like,
what
oh my
yes.
God, there's this new thing. I have to do it.
Don't do
I'm on
that.
the board too. Actually, last time I gave a talk, I updated to Mavericks the night before. Everything went fine, but I was actually kind of on edge the entire day, the entire night. It was.
We run into this all the time. We get all kinds of requests that's like, we just built our website on Foundation 4 and you just released Foundation 5. How do we upgrade? And it's like, you just built your website. It's fine. You just built it.
Yeah,
like,
it's not like that stopped working. It
right,
still works.
It's still good code. Like it's fine. Just don't worry about it. Like when you're going to build the next thing in Foundation 5 or Bootstrap 4 or Foundation 6 or whatever exists at that time. Use that because there'll be some cool new things. But you don't need the cool new things every single time. Especially this is a coder nerd versus business goals kind of weird conversation to have, where it's like you can do the big new cool thing and in all likelihood screw yourself and your company. So just it's not nearly as urgent to upgrade as everybody thinks it is. Like the new versions are cool. You're still okay. Everything's
minor and patches,
fine.
sure, go for it. Go to town on it. But
and I mean, I think both Bootstrap and Foundation have like pretty simple ways when it's like small point releases to do very easy upgrades.
Yeah, especially if you use like CDN. There's the Bootstrap Cdn that's built by these NetDNA guys. They just do it for free. They'll host they host that. They host Foundation, I think, too. Do they?
Do they?
I think they might host the version of it. They host a bunch of other frameworks.
That'd be cool.
They host Font Awesome, so if you want icon fonts, like you can just get it super quick, super easy. So.
And I know with if you
Zerb
use
has
the
icon fonts too.
We do. We have icon fonts. If you use the Sass version of Foundation, if you do like a command line install, it's all done through Grunt and Bower, and you can just say update, and it'll just update things for you. It's pretty straightforward. That doesn't work from like 5 to 6, 6 doesn't exist yet, but it won't work for 5 to 6.
Yeah. So short answer,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you can upgrade when it's minor or patched, but the big jumps, we're going to break things so that we can stay sane, because we don't want legacy code, and just try to move things forward.
We usually have migration guides. I know
Yeah.
we have, I think
Both
you
of
have,
us do.
yeah, we both have
Pretty
migration guides.
extensive. Yeah.
Really, all that people care about is that it works and it looks good, and it works on multiple browsers and devices. So
Yeah.
Yeah, and,
That's-
and it's cool to worry about like the next big cool thing. Like that's why we do frameworks in general, is to worry about the next big cool thing. But if you're building like your company's website, it doesn't have to be the coolest, latest thing every single second of the day. Like you let it
use
hang out
Foundation
for a
too.
minute and then go to the. There are we have things at Zerb still on Foundation 0.8, so we don't update everything. So I should.
So I wanted to go ahead and open this up to the audience for questions.
Oh, yeah, hi.
And we have somebody in the back there, but
Is there a?
Wait, do we have a mic?
Okay, so she was asking if we do anything for like the next big version of any of our frameworks. Do we do anything to validate whether we're really doing the next right thing or the next cool thing? Do we do like user testing? Do we do any kind of like discovery or validation around what it is we're doing next? I don't know. You want to go first?
Absolutely, Jonathan. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem.
So we do a couple things. We don't do usability studies directly on Bootstrap. I don't know if you guys do on Foundation.
We don't.
But we get a lot of people that give us feedback,
Yes.
both on Twitter or on Hacker News, or which Hacker News you can take or leave. But people also open a lot of issues. Bootstrap to date, so we've been out for over 2.5 years now, and we're about to pass 13,000 issues on GitHub, closed issues. And so we've gotten a lot of feedback. A lot of those are duplicates, like, hey, you spelled this word wrong. But a lot of them are also really good feedback, like, hey, it'd be awesome if we do this. And the way I'm handling that now for Bootstrap 3, going from 3 to 4, is we have a private repo. It's called our team repo on GitHub. And there's an issue in there, and whenever I see something that we can't do for V3 because it's a breaking change, or it's too big, or we're just not going to be able to get to it just because of our own constraints, because we all have like jobs too beyond this stuff, I add a link to that issue in this private issue that no one else can see. So myself and my team are able to see this and know, hey, this is stuff we need to address in the next version. So we're always keeping track of this stuff as much as we can. Do we give feedback to people when we take those ideas? Do we trust the people that are giving us feedback?
Sometimes. If they know what they're doing, I mean.
How do you know that, Jonathan?
I know everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go for it.
Okay. Well, I'll speak slightly on behalf of you. Everybody who works primarily or in any kind of core capacity and on any of these frameworks, probably any framework at all, is, how do I put this nicely, an egomaniacal control freak.
Or a masochist.
Masochist bastard. No, we're just very, very
Thanks.
opinionated. Yeah, no problem. I assumed I could say that on your behalf.
Sorry.
We're very, very opinionated, and to some extent, I mean, there's a lot of people who contribute because we have the same sort of thing with Foundation. The scale of the issues is slightly smaller, but we get a lot of good feedback through the issues, and you can typically tell from what someone is asking for, what someone's suggesting. There's people who put more time into their suggestions and put more thought into what it is they're looking for, what they want than others. I mean, there's plenty of people who are just, man, it would be super cool if I could have a button where when I click on it, the page spins around in a circle and does this thing. And it's like, that's cool. That would be neat for you, I guess, but there's no way we're going to do that. And then there's people who have like really good, solid reasoning for what they're looking for. And those people, there's not a rule for it. There's not like a science really to it. It's just you look and you see.
Yeah.
And
there are a couple signs. Like if you see the same thing reported a couple of times, then you know, hey, I should look out for this in the future at the very least. Or you need to make a change to your documentation for why is this question coming up over and over and over again.
Right.
And if there's a lot of people saying, hey man, you really shit the bed on this thing, you should fix that, then it's like, we should probably fix that. So you got like the crowd mentality for that kind of stuff, right? And that's the beautiful part of open source. And the hard part about open source is letting all these people know exactly what we're thinking without overpromising or saying something we don't mean or coming off like an asshole, because it's really easy to do when you're just writing words. You don't pick up on all the context or the tones.
It's really easy for Mark.
It's really easy for me to be a jerk. I'm sorry, guys. I just want to apologize in advance to everybody on the internet. So we try to be as nice and inclusive as possible, and a lot of times, you just got to call it out like, that sounds like a great idea, not something that we're going to work on. And sometimes that's, hey, I don't want to work on that, and I don't want to have to maintain that. And sometimes it's just, pure logistics that you can't make it happen. But
most frameworks also have sort of, no one's going to get to ask any other questions. We're just going to talk forever. Most frameworks have at least some sort of like, I don't know, guiding philosophy, I guess, to some extent, and some of that just comes from where they originated.
Yeah.
But I know there's frameworks where, I mean, there's any number of things I'm sure you could suggest to like Verb and Neat that they're not going to add because they're incredibly opinionated about what they include, and it's like basically nothing. And I mean, Foundation, we have particular goals for Foundation and what we want to do with Foundation, and I know Bootstrap has the same. So there's times when, yeah, someone has like a great idea, and it's like, boy, that would be a really super cool thing to have in, you know, Pure and not in Foundation. I'm not knocking Pure. Shut up.
Go do that over there.
Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, we'll stop going on and on about
next
that
question.
Next song. Next song.
Hi. So Jacob gave a talk about feeling guilty about these huge, you know, super popular open source projects that you create. As the creators of some of the most popular frameworks on the internet, how do you feel about, you know, being, you know, taking ownership and continue to take ownership of these projects that you create? And do you ever get to that point where you just think, you know, it's time to move on?
You feel guilty, Jacob? Really? You feel guilty? Really? All right, it's fine.
So Jacob gave this. What? Yeah.
Me? About Foundation? No.
So what I'll say about that is, so you got to see Jacob's entire talk about this. It's a really good talk. Honestly, it is, and he talks about what is open source and why do I feel so guilty. It's really easy to burn yourself out on anything, as what we do. Like, it's easy to just be staring at a screen doing the same old kind of stuff for hours and hours and hours. And we've put thousands of hours into these things, both myself, Jacob, and Jonathan here. And sometimes, yeah, you can get burnt out. But the fact, I'm still going strong, I think. Like, I think I'm all right with it. I can go a little bit longer. I'm slipping. Shit. I get like 60 notifications a day just from Bootstrap alone on GitHub. So like, sometimes it's hard to keep that up. And we've built up a team around it. So there's like 3 or 4 other guys that help me like triage issues and like keep me fresh. They'll come to me with ideas. They'll fix things for me and just like, nah, man, I got that. That's totally fine. I'll take care of that. But it is tough to feel responsible for everyone that's using your thing. So like those 5 million sites that are using it, it's like, yo, if I stop doing this or like I just delete the repo, I'm probably going to be crapping out a lot of people's hearts here about this stuff, right? And I don't want to do that. So it's not only is it the guilt thing, but it's also like you feel like you really need to, you're definitely responsible for it. Obviously you are as the maintainer, but you're responsible for so many other people and everything else like that. And that's why we version, that's why we have the issues and everything else like that. So
I don't know, I think it's a privilege in large part. I mean,
oh, definitely. You
could have asked, I'm going to go on, you could have asked either of us 5 or 6 or 7 years ago, hey, are you going to make a thing that hundreds of thousands or millions or whatever of people are going to use and you're going to be responsible for that? And we'd been like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, I didn't see that happening.
No. So it's quite a privilege, and I mean, yeah, occasionally it's a heavy thing to think about, but at the end of the day, I mean, we're doing our best. There's lots of people who are doing similar things. If we screw something up, someone else is probably going to get it right, and we all learn from each other. I mean, we learn from each other.
That's a really good point, actually. If you feel like we screwed up, you got to call us out on that.
Yeah.
Like, if I screwed up, tell me. Like, if I misread your issue and I just closed it and was pretty terse, pretty brief about it, talk to me. Like, tell me about it. Like, we want to hear.
Usually people will come back on that one.
Yeah, exactly.
They do not like you closing their issues without fixing things.
I believe, I actually did watch, Jacob, I watched your talk, and I think that the idea is that we all want to create, and we want to keep creating and keep making, like, the next best thing. But if you're stuck updating and working on the same project, then maybe you get bored.
Yeah, I
and
think
that
the
might
part
be,
is actually that you don't feel like you're doing enough. Like, whatever you're doing, however much as it is, it's never enough. Like, I can't spend 1 hour on everybody's issue debugging it and making like JS bins to example it and everything else like that and testing it on every single device. No individual can do that.
Sure.
Maybe larger teams can, but that I think is the guilty part. Is like, whatever we do, no matter how much it is, there's always going to be more that you can do. And dealing with that, sometimes when you stop and think about it, it's like, well, shit, I'm like letting these people down. I go through that every now and then, but.
How many people work on Bootstrap and Foundation separately? Well, you can answer that separately.
The core team for Bootstrap is myself, Jacob, a guy in Greece, a guy in Germany, and so 5 people, and a guy down in LA. So it's 5 people that work on the core team.
Foundation is worked on by, in some capacity or the other, by most of the design team and most of the engineering team at Zurb. So it's, there's probably 7 or 8 designers and 3 or 4 engineers that touch Foundation on a fairly frequent basis. They do a lot of work for it a lot of the time. We also have two or three guys who do support and stuff for Foundation.
So, Mark, do you work? Mark currently he moved to GitHub in 2012, correct? Mm-hmm. Do you work on Bootstrap at work, or is it a separate project?
Sometimes, yeah. Actually, the month and a half before Bootstrap 3 launched, that's all I worked on. You know, everyone's familiar with GitHub, or somewhat familiar with GitHub? On the profile page, this thing, say no, it's fine.
Just knock him down.
There's this thing called a contribution graph, and it represents every day of the last year, and you get a green square if you like made a commit or a comment. Mine are mostly like light green, and then there's right in the middle, there's that month of like August, right before the release, and it's just the darkest green imaginable. And it's all from Bootstrap, just going to town on it. And sometimes you need to do that. It's great. GitHub gives me the freedom to do that, as long as it doesn't like interfere with what I'm doing on a daily basis. As long as I'm delivering and it's doing what I'm supposed to do, yeah, it's great. And GitHub actually has the kind of environment where you can work wherever and whenever. Like most of our companies are remote. So if you're more productive at night on doing GitHub things, then work at night on GitHub things. So.
By the way, your coding style guide, code guide. If you guys have not seen that, you should look on. Give us the URL. But I checked it out. It's awesome.
It's a crappy URL. Just go to my GitHub profile, github.com/MDO.
Plus, it's terrible. Got it all wrong. I'm just kidding.
All right. So, any more questions? Right over here, sir.
We could just merge like Voltron into Foundstrap or BootStation.
I like BootStation.
Yeah,
you would.
Yeah. No, it just seems better than Foundstrap.
Yeah, it does actually.
You have the UI standard. There's like UI standard guidelines of naming conventions. What is the difference in the naming conventions of components?
It was my preference.
And mine.
There's a couple. There's like some that are documented and like they try to be really like public and like deliberate about it. Like there's BEM, block element modifier. I don't like that. So my only nitpick with that is I don't like that they use double dashes or double underscores. My own is like, hey, there's a base class or a prefix, and then you add something to the end of that. So like, alert is your base class, and you have alert danger, alert success. Like, and those, the base class has all the common stuff, and then you extend it or add stuff to it, or hopefully on the rare occasion, overrides stuff like that.
Those, I think we actually use the same class names.
Yeah, you're like one-third of the way there.
So if you want alerts, I think you're good to go. I think you can do it with alerts. I mean, with Foundation, one of the big things we wanted with Foundation was when we brought on new people at Zurb, we wanted them to be able to get up to speed very quickly. So it was very important for us to have very, very, very easily human readable syntax. So that's why, if you go back a little ways, before we added in like a lot of different grid sizes and stuff, Foundation was like 8 columns literally spelled out, which was just pretty straightforward. It was like you have a row and 8 columns. We didn't prefix stuff because we were building the sites ourselves. We didn't prefix anything. We can prefix things now. I think.
We mentioned those sites that actually provide like interfaces for building. Like you take a Bootstrap or a Foundation component or build a Foundation or Bootstrap site. If you want to do that, if you want to go that route, man, bold move. Definitely do it. Like that'll take a good amount of time and effort, I feel. But there are examples of other people doing that in some capacity. Like, hey, I'm going to go the Bootstrap route, or I'm going to go the Foundation route, and hey, we've got both options readily available for you and fully supported. So
we do have a lot of very similar, I mean, to be totally honest, we have a lot of very similar components between Bootstrap and Foundation. In fact, most frameworks, it's because there's only so many things that most people need as building blocks. And we augment that and we do new things. But as far as like having sufficiently compatible identical syntax, I mean,
just build.
Maybe in Bootstrap 10 and Foundation 23.
There you go.
Where their great-great-great-grandchildren will be working on it. Right.
See, he's
ha, ha, ha. All right, we have another question right here. Yes.
Well, mine's better. I'm just kidding. See, I get to.
You want to repeat it, though?
I have jerk responses, too. He asked, what are some things to consider when choosing between Bootstrap and Foundation? And I'll tell you what I'll throw in, and any other framework. Both our frameworks and most frameworks are reasonably opinionated. You probably have some sort of opinion of your own. I would look for something that reasonably maps to the way you want to work and the way you want to write things and the direction that you want it to head. Historically, I'll let Mark speak on behalf of Bootstrap. Historically, one of the, guiding mantras for Foundation, because of the way we built it and the way we use it, is we always wanted Foundation to be as easy to modify and muck with and build your own thing on top of it as possible, to the point that for a long time, Foundation, frankly, was kind of ugly out of the box. It looks nicer now. but we really didn't want to have any kind of opinion on anything. We didn't want it to look like anything. So we stay as true to that as we possibly can. So that's one thing to at least consider. I mean, there's Sass versus Less. There's all kinds of things. I think.
Yeah, the biggest one used to be Sass versus Less. Sass being for Foundation, Less being for Bootstrap.
That used to be the big
That's
one.
now not the case anymore because Bootstrap 3.1 introduced the official Sass port. That's two other guys that are basically the main team for that, and they just run a script, like I said earlier, and import everything that we do, and they're up to date. When we release a new version of Bootstrap and Less, the Sass port comes out the same day. It's going to be in linked versions and released all at once. Some of the other things, some of the components, like if you go down to that level, like there's that use case as well. I haven't looked too closely at the compiled code for Bootstrap, or for Foundation, for Bootstrap, no, I'm just kidding. But in Bootstrap, Jacob actually wrote this thing with a couple other folks at Twitter, I believe, called Recess, and that's what started like our own Less compiler. And we did a whole bunch of CSS linting, basically, for how our code is formatted. Like the default Less compiler used to just spit everything out, wasn't that readable. And we want to be as available, we want Bootstrap to be as available to anybody of any skill level or any experience to help them make something awesome with what we've done. So we make sure that our code's as legible as possible at every single level. So not going to town on like nesting in Less or Sass, like you can get in a lot of trouble with that kind of stuff. Not going over the board with mixins and variables, although honestly we kind of have. And people really want those things a lot.
They really, really do.
And then, I forgot what the other one was. But
Something other that's cool.
yeah.
Yes.
We have time for just one more question.
Oh my.
Because we don't want to, unless you guys want to keep it going, keep asking more questions. It's up to you. But I think it's.
She's really excited about the
okay.
question.
She's
Let's
waving
call
her
on
Yes.
arms and doing
Hold
all
on.
kinds of things.
Also, we're going to be here afterwards. Like, this isn't the end.
Yeah, we'll
if
hang
this
out.
is,
So
like,
come ask us things.
Hi.
Or don't.
So I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit to how an organization that isn't really formally using these frameworks can get started using these frameworks, who should be involved in that? Is it design, engineering? How should those different people or groups be involved in terms of adapting the processes and making these decisions?
On some level, all those people need to be involved at least a little bit because you need buy-in from
Yeah.
a lot of people to make something like this work.
as far as getting started, I think both of us have pretty good getting started documentation. I know with Bootstrap we have, hey, what is Bootstrap? What's the story behind it?
Yeah.
What's all included? And then how to use it. And we have like some quick starts too for downloading compiled stuff, using the CDN, and then going in a little bit more about how to extend it and stuff like that. So as far as finding out what it can do for you and how to get started with it, both are pretty well documented for that process. As far as who's involved, that all depends on your organization and your team. So you need to talk to those people. At the very least, I would include design and engineering.
Yeah.
A lot of companies, like you hear, oh no, designers are off doing their own damn thing, and they're like, no, the engineers don't listen to us. Just stop that. Just talk to people. Like, we're all smart, intelligent, good-looking people trying to do awesome shit on the internet. Let's just keep doing that with each other, and like good things will happen. So,
It's it's important to get buy-in on big decisions like this, and what's part of your stack is kind of a big deal because if you build on top of Bootstrap or Foundation, then you don't want to do that for a month and then rip it out and switch it to something else. You're just burning yourself. So you have to kind of commit to it. I would say for both our frameworks and for a number of others, it's good to investigate like what are the community resources, what are the other resources that are going to be available, what kind of if something doesn't work, what are you going to do? I'll throw in the plug for Zerb here, just because Foundation is really core to our business. Foundation is one of the 4 major things that we do, which means that we do things like paid support and we do things like consulting, implementation, that kind of stuff. Bootstrap has an enormous community of people to ask questions to and figure things out with. Any of these frameworks, the people behind them are pretty approachable too. So, you can always ask questions of things. I know Mark will answer questions about things. I'll answer questions about things. Various people from Zerb, which there's a whole little cadre of them over there.
raise your
Hi,
hands.
guys.
There it is.
Woo, there's a whole little Zerbian crew. We'll answer questions about things. We all try to be pretty approachable. Like Mark said, definitely design and engineering. If this is assuming that your design team does anything with code or cares. There's still plenty
should.
And they absolutely should. Designers should code. At least front-end stuff. They don't need to go way into the weeds, but they need to know how things work. Anybody who's going to have to touch this code should be involved in some level of the decision-making. I would say fairly confidently that using a framework is almost all the time a good business decision. because you're going to take advantage of a lot of somebody else's work and save yourself a lot of time and a lot of pain. So that's the pitch that I usually make to businesses that want to get on board with a framework. Did that answer your question, or are we just rambling? Okay, cool.
We nailed it.
Okay,
right.
so we're gonna give you guys each get a closing statement.
Oh.
Starting with Mark.
Thank you all for coming out. I have lots of stuff to give you. I brought plenty of stickers from GitHub. Good ones too, not just the original ones. And I have shirts. And I only brought a couple limited shirts. So if I have your size and you come up and you're nice enough, then you get a shirt or a sticker. Or a moleskin.
Well,
Thank you for coming again. Thank
Look at you with all your fucking swag. This guy.
I don't have a shirt gun though.
That's how he got 100,000 plus followers. He sent them.
100 plus?
Yeah, 100.
I broke 100 yesterday,
Yeah.
actually.
Did you really?
Yeah, 100.
You little
102.
shit. All right. Anyways, wait, do I go now? Is it me?
Yeah, it's all you. I'm done.
Like Mark said, thank you very much for coming. We really appreciate it. I'll speak slightly on behalf of Mark and I, which is that, like I said, neither of us would have dreamed quite some time ago that we would have done any of this kind of stuff or worked on this kind of stuff, so it's really flattering. And I'm not going to say humbling, because we both have enormous egos, but it's very flattering to see all of you, so thank you very much for coming. I also have things to give you if you want, like, cool foundation stickers. They're, you know, it's not an Octocat, it's a Yeti, but I think
I got hella Octocats though.
I think we can go toe to toe. I mean, it's a Yeti, it's big, it's got claws and whatnot. So there's some things. Come talk to us about anything. A lot of the fun of coming to these things is hearing from interesting people. So come talk to us. But thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, John and Mark. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Andy and Cascade. Thank you, Eventbrite.
Thank you to Denise, and to Evan over at News Circle. We'll have the video online so people can share with their